Start.
So now I can see you.
I'm going to start. Hello, welcome everyone. JD Center of Art is delighted to collaborate with India International Center for its Meet the Artist program. Vivan Sundaram is the guest for the two. Thank you. If you can mute everyone, please. Thank you. In the lecture, the artist will share key images from the various series of works across 50 years of his career. These images contextualize major turning points that have shaped his artistic inquiry. But first about JDCA. JD Center of Art is envisioned as a unique art center that aims to preserve and exhibit its large collection of folk, tribal, traditional, and contemporary art, all under one roof. It is currently under construction in Bhubaneswar, Odisha. Meet the Artist, or MT as we call it, is a permanent program of JDCA, where invited artists, craftspersons, or scholars share their work, their experiences, and insights through an illustrated talk. Since 2001, 257 such Meet the Artist talks have taken place on the second Saturday of every month. Currently, our sessions are being held online. Vivan Sundaram.
Somebody should tell them.
Vivan Sundaram is a prolific contemporary artist, engaging with everything from drawings, paintings, photographs to installation art. Born in 1943 Shimla, he studied painting at MS University Baroda and the Slade School of
Hi, Aftab and Pola.
He has exhibited in various Biennials across the world, as well as several important exhibitions in Tate Modern, London, International Center of Photography, New York, Haus der Kunst, Munich, and the Chicago Cultural Center in Chicago, amongst other places. We would like Jatin Das to say a few words, and then over to you, Vivan Sundaram.
Vivan.
Hello, Jatin. Hello.
Hi. Who gave your name as Vivan? Your mother, your father, or both of them?
Well, my original name is Vivaswan.
Sorry?
Vivaswan. But the Vivan seemed to be easier for people to pronounce.
Oh, I see. I didn't know that. Wonderful. I recall that you and I met almost 60 years ago.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah. Number 5 Racecourse Road, where your father was there, your parents. And then in Bombay, in the Worldly Chawls, where you had rented a place at the Worldly Seaface Crossing. Then in Baroda, then in London sometimes. Beautiful time. It's a long, long journey of your own and my own. But our streets have crossed many times.
That's right.
Yeah. And how did you decide to go to Baroda to study art?
Well, I was proposed Baroda by Karl Khandalawala, who was a family friend. And he said he doesn't have to go abroad. There's a very modern and dynamic art school at MS University. So that's where I went in 1961 and joined the painting department.
Lovely. And of course, at that time, there was many stalwarts, K.G. Subramaniam and Bendre and all these people were there.
Yeah, Subramaniam was my teacher.
Yeah.
And then later on, Ghulam Sheikh as for Story of Art, and Jyoti Bhatt, who is still alive, wonderful man.
They were very dedicated artists, and that's very good to have teachers like this. When I went to JJ, I had Palsikar and others, great artists and great mentors. So I recall when you went to London, you used to write me a letter almost every fortnight.
Oh.
That I'm thinking of you, I'm missing you, we haven't met for a long time, and so on. So there was a beautiful time. And now we are all isolated. Many of us don't meet. When I lived in Nizamuddin, used to meet a lot.
Yeah.
And many artists used to meet regularly, almost once or twice a week. And these days we haven't met for months and years. So I'm very happy to welcome you to the JT Center of Art program. And I think this is one of the very few in the country where the Meet the Artist program has continued for more than 20 years, uninterrupted. Now tell us about your journey, Vivan.
Well, first of all, to congratulate you for running this marathon of 258 lectures, and I'm proud to be here. And just to say that this is a very important institution, and I know you're also setting up a museum in Bhubaneswar. So congratulations to you, Jatin.
Art Center. I call it Art Center because the word museum is in Bengali they say Jadughar, in Hindi they say Sangrahalaya.
Yeah.
So I think it's an art center because this will be a place where folk, tribal, classical, and contemporary would be together
I
on permanent display. And you had also come there once.
I have early on.
Yes. We also hold a National Documentary Film Festival on art every year for 13 years. Everything has been stalled and interrupted because of the epidemic. And but now we're trying to revive. Siddharth is now looking after. And B.V. Doshi, the famous architect, has designed the center.
Yes,
So
I know.
things like that. Now, tell us about you. You can start from now backward or from your beginning till now, whichever way you want to start.
Yeah, well, just to begin with, my talk titled Diverge has a very strong element called the jump cut. I had a long connection with cinema in the 60s and in fact even did a course in the Slade School of Art instead of history of art, the history of cinema. So that has influenced me considerably. So I playfully use the word jump cut because although it's on a linear path, but every time there are some unexpected leaps and jumps and different connections. This is the first work done in 1966, and it has many elements in it which I still continue to use. One is that this image is a found object which was painted as a backdrop when I was living in Banaras, and I got this size printed. I had also done some graffiti on some images of Khajuraho from the official book, which are separately available. But here you can see them inserted. Then there are also these stripes which refer to optical art. So many things in a very spontaneous way have informed this work. Next, please. It's called May 68. So we moved 2 years ahead. And May 68 is the moment of extraordinary international student movement started in Paris. And I was in London and it came across to London as well. And there were many leaders of it, like Tariq Ali. And I used to then, from my art school, go to this London School of Economics and listen to lectures. So this spontaneous anarchist movement deeply affected me. You will see a certain sophistication in the painting and in the design. And this was influenced by my first tutor, R.B. Kitai, who became a kind of guru figure for a new kind of figuration that was taking place, a kind of complex narrative. He was a very intellectual artist as well, and I didn't have the sophistication both in drawing as well as in the references that he had. But next, please. This work is called, as you will see, from Persian miniatures to stand brackage. Persian miniatures, because I have taken these white forms, rectangular forms, which in miniatures are used to write text. So they actually already, Persian miniatures are fairly flat and on the surface. They have a strong ornamental element, and that these texts written, which are poetry and other aspects, could reference to the subject matter. And I pick these as sort of as if they are blank spaces for you to enter. The reference to stand brackage is a young American person called Peace Adam Sidney came to London to promote American underground cinema. And Stan Brakhage was a very radical, very spontaneous filmmaker who put together images at incredible speed, and they moved as image after image, breaking, in fact, the surface and the edge. And I think that he was greatly influenced by Jackson Pollock. I was generally considered to be a figurative painter, but if I can be personal, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York bought this work, and just at that moment opened a huge exhibition called Epic Abstraction with people like Jackson Pollock. And the designer just took the painting, he knew nothing about me, and he put it about 10 paintings or in the next room to Jackson Pollock and all the other abstract painters. So in a sense that this work and its formal elements stood very strongly out. And I think that a great difference between the American painters and other European painters was my use of color. And this is what the late Oakley and Wieser said, that don't say you're influenced by American flat hard edge painting. This color is your palette, and this palette, has very specific Indian elements plus your own method of applying them. Next, please. This is a jump to 1980, where I have, you might recognize my dear friend Bhupen Khakhar, who in fact in Baroda, also initiated the pop movement, and we were close friends. Then I went to England, but I did have the show which you can see here. Here I show Bhupen with his friend Howard Hodgkin, who came to Baroda, and they were, in a sense, had a similar inclination of their sexuality. But it's the aspect of color that both Howard Hodgkin, a great lover of Indian painting, used. And I kind of show this kind of floating blue with Bhupen looking at his painting, but that there is a door outside, and that's the world that he also entered and lived with the people and the streets. Next, please. This painting is called Guddo of a young girl. And here I use there's a kind of cinematic element in this structure that you can see. Imagine a crane shot moving from below, going across and going into the left side through the wall in a kind of Marquesian way, where the dupatta of this woman, who's the mother of this child, young girl, you have a scene tragically which continues to this day of how young girls are raped, and even in police chowkis. So she became a kind of emblematic figure that would, through the wall, have a red flame which puts the chowki on fire. And in the distance, there's a cool blue, and this, in a sense, is a sort of scene from Kasoli, where I have a house. Next, please. I started a series called Journeys, where I was getting interested in photography. And I had a book of history of photography and, and made many works. So this is called the Orientalist, and a kind of imaginary boat between Africa on the left side, you can see, and the map of India on the right side. And in this boat is a kind of, what shall I say, almost an orgy, a kind of Matisse laying out of the figures. And here the an ethnographer stands on a crocodile watching this scene. Next, please. We move to a jump cut, and here the melancholic look refers to the Second World War. At the Slade School, there was a course in the history of cinema, and the director Thorald Dickinson started a series on the Second World War, which I had no inkling of what it represented, both in terms of documentary films as well as of feature films. And every Tuesday for a whole year, one saw an incredible number of films. Much later, and this is the date of the painting, in the late 80s, I went on a Polish scholarship, and I went to Auschwitz and another smaller camp called Birkenau. You see these little hut-like things, one of the last ones which were there. And for me, the reality was a remarkable film by the French filmmaker called Alain Resnais, called Night and Fog. And in fact, the film brought back the reality almost more expressionistically than what I was seeing. So this interface between the film that was there as part of my makeup, my historical understanding of the war, informed this series of film, which I called Long Night. Next, please. Yes, so again, there's a sort of greater chaos, a greater disruption of things. And this railway track, again, entering the space, is reminiscent of great Russian filmmaker called Tarkovsky. And he had this aspect of what he called entering the zone. So I'm kind of picking up references to cinema, completely unconnected with what I was, in one very open-ended and imaginative sense, trying to have a sense of what my experience of the Second World War was through cinema. This comes into the early 90s, and this is engine oil. And the engine oil refers to the huge Gulf War that was really a war about oil. Attacking Saddam Hussein was one thing, but it was a war about oil. And I got this engine oil, which is, in those days, the carbon that came out of the cars that doesn't come out nowadays, that you could go to the garage where every 6 months or a year they would clean your oil, and this is all the carbon that would remain, and the oil does spill through in the handmade paper, and you can see the kind of glow around it. That is how the oil is moving. Now this is a fragile medium, and it will last only because the carbon that is there will be there, but it will fade in time, and in a sense that is a metaphor also about the drawings. Next, please. It's called 100,000 Sorties. This was a war bombing from the sky, from remote taking off, and it was not a war about where you had the image from the ground, like in the Long Night that positioning of the view is from the ground. So this is a view of a wall from the skies. One important break is, as you will see, that there is a tray of oil as the stitched paper comes onto the floor, and it is stained by the oil. So I have a materiality of it, and it's indicating a shift from painting to sculpture and then to installation art. Next, please. I was in a residency in the northeast of England, and it was a town where on the River Tees, and the River Tees flowed into the North Sea, where there was a great deal, a very important aspect of oil drilling, which they said had such advanced technology that only space technology was ahead of that. That was their view, but it was remarkable. We were allowed to go in. But I used this burnt engine oil, and this is also sort of reference that this form, could be what the Vikings wore as they entered England, as well as how they journeyed across. So this curved shape that you see is the River Tees, and I've got handmade paper from India, from the Gandhi Ashram, which is a rag content paper, and it can be very strong, and as it has the oil, it almost looks like metal. So it's a very free handling of these parts that are pinned onto the wall, and in a way I'm moving towards an installation. But this is a work, and it is not technically an installation, but it has loosened its relationship to the surface, and then you give the drawing, and the different parts are put together. Next, please. This is in memory of Krishna Kumar, and the exhibition was called Collaboration Combined. And this was also a reference to connecting to different artists. Krishna Kumar was a very radical painter and sculptor in Baroda, and he wanted to start a movement in Kerala, but tragically he committed suicide. And so this is in memory of him. But he was an exceptional figure, and he had worked in an artist workshop, sculptor's workshop in Kasoli, which I ran, and I gave him a space for this. And here you can see again a dismantling of the painting as objects as they come to the floor, and they are in three different parts. So the wood allowed me to fix other elements onto it, and so I am now breaking away from the pictorial to the material aspect that is there. Next, please. This exhibition was also very important for me because I did think of different aspects of photography, which I was just understanding and connecting to photographers. And this is called Enclosing the Gaze. And just as you have a text underneath the photograph, I have a text by the great French philosopher who wrote a remarkable book on photography, which to this day is considered a kind of Bible, called Camera Lucida. And these are quotations which are on top. But behind them, as you go around, you can see the image of the artist's work, and photographer's work. And the work is also reflected on the mirror that is behind. So you see one image above that, which is both behind the text as well as it is reflected onto the mirror. So I'm converting this column, phallic column, I'll call it playfully. Barth was sexually gay, and he did say that photography is over 100 years old, but there are no monuments to it. There aren't any museums, but that has changed a lot since then. Next, please. It's called Houseboat. It's in a beautiful gallery in Montreal and called Obero. And this again is made of handmade paper from the Gandhi ashram. So the fragility of this paper and the fact that it becomes not just a visual object, next please, but it is also a space which you can enter and walk into. So this boat, as it were, is propped up on railway sleepers, and it is a metaphor for that was being said for the Muslims that they should leave the country and go out. So I have then the reference of the boat people elsewhere. So this boat becomes a platform, a momentary protection for them. And then I playfully have a Kathakali artist who's making these expressions as it being viewed from a telescope. And this is the room, that the house that you can enter, and you can see the handmade paper, what the fact that you can get the objects of daily use and a beautiful light on top. Next, please. This is a very important work for me. This is the later version. The earlier version was in 1993 at the IFAX Gallery in Delhi, where this came about because from a single photograph of a man killed in the streets of Bombay after the post the demolition of the masjid at Ayodhya, that the massacre that took place. And it was a deeply poignant moment, and one didn't know what to do or how to paint it or represent it. And I thought that this photograph, next please, which I had a print of 11 inches by 15 inches, next please, which I obsessively pierced 3,600 nails through it. It was a kind of ritual act of going on as the violence that took place. This grid, this screen, as it were, metaphorically, is a screen that says the nails are coming out. So if you touch it, your hand will get wounded. And it's saying that this wound of this man should also wound you. And from this image, next please, I then made different size enlargements. Like this is a rubbish dump on the street in central Bombay. And these nails are put on the figure as if it's a funeral pyre. They're different forms, which then become a performative act, that I send this photograph, and on this photograph, in this packet, are these nails, which the curator has to put them on. So it's a kind of playful ritual act that covers the body and says that here the man will have at least, as it is said, a decent burial. Next, please. This is the version at Kiran Nada Museum. When Rubina asked me to do the show, I said, I don't want to just repeat what I did in 1993. I would like to shift the axis, and shifting the axis was that I would like to remove this human figure, which you saw, and think of it in terms of abstraction. There's a great deal of abstraction in the very structure of this work, as you see the tiles below, the iron barricade in front, referring to many aspects of minimalist sculpture. And I pierced this steel beam, 10-foot beam, through, as it were, resting on this rubbish dump, where I removed the other attributes. And so you, in a sense, walk into this space as you're walking into the memorial. And if I can be personal, I'm very pleased that the Tate Modern has bought this work, and in March 2023, they will be exhibiting it in the tanks for a whole 1.5 years. Next, please. This is another melancholic work where I met this very dynamic woman called Bharti Chaturvedi. People in Delhi would know about her. She had that organization of waste pickers, but she also writes a lot about the environment. And these soles of shoes, I used to go and attend the meetings, and I said, why do you take off the main shoe? Why only the sole? So jokingly, at least I interpreted, they said, that it's only the sole that has value. It's only the sole that we can put on the tarazu and get some money from it. So then I got these soles on these beds. And I think that the very poignant part of this is that with these simple light bulbs, about 40-watt bulbs, they look much brighter here. You get these exquisite lozenge shadows. So it becomes a kind of floating world, that the melancholy of these shoes, which are painful, and many think of the shoes that I've collected in the concentration camps. This is in a beautiful space in Milan, and many of the Italians came up to me and said, have you heard of Arte Povera? So I said, yes, I do, and I'm an admirer of that movement. So they said, you seem to have been influenced by it. I said, sure, such an important movement, has a worldwide influence. Next, please. Again, moving from trash, from garbage, which has become such an important social issue today. Again, through Bharti Chaturvedi, I had these waste pickers and connected to them. And I then in my studio created a whole cityscape, as you can see, from this garbage. I had some young artists, students helping me. And there is a beautiful video called The Brief Ascension of Marion Hussain. Marion Hussain was actually not anymore, a waste picker. And he came and he was so creative in his expression, and also had a beautiful body. And I planned to kind of do the video. In fact, there are a lot of videos which you can't see, but they extend it from the viewpoint here. Now, this viewpoint, as you will see now, the central axis was there in the 12-bed ward as you go to the end. And here also there's a central axis, which I jokingly call Rajpath, and there's a ceremonial going down Rajpath, but all the city is growing around it. So this perspectival view, as I was getting interested in photography, I said, well, this is one very well-known view, a kind of Renaissance view, where you get a maximum depth. And so you don't realize that this depth, how much is it? But it's just about 65 feet in depth from a slightly top angle view, which is how many of the artists went on hillsides and painted their paintings. Next, please. This is called Master Plan, and it's the same work which is shot from above, and to show it as a plan, which means a flat view. And the flat view also brings out the decorative elemental quality of this vast amount of items, which then create patterns and make a very modernist statement. Next, please. This work also is now a digital manipulation. If you see, although there is a sense of perspective here, but it is a false perspective because you see the same elements repeated twice. So I was also equally interested to make the viewer see how the digital enters the space and makes you think about what you're seeing, not just automatically very fine, and which can be a sense of depth. So as I'm playing with these items in this big field, in the perspective that is here digitally constructed, you get this two perspectives coming to a vanishing point. Next, please. I have made this again a jump cut because the point I'm making here is that this is a painting called the Shergill Family. And it's a large 8-foot high painting. And I wanted the painting to have a viewer entering this space and walking through, and the point of focus comes to the man behind, and that is the father, Umrao Singh, who's now got a reputation as being one of the pioneers. I will see more of his photographs of modern Indian photography. And here's Amrita Shergill and her sister, my mother, Indira Shergill, and their mother, Marie Antoinette. And I playfully put myself in the mirror there at the bottom, so as if reflected under the easel of Amrita Shergill, as if that I'm going to continue her lineage, but I have done it in different ways in archival work. So this perspective I play with the previous image of a false sense of depth. Next, please. So here you see the digital manipulation of the figures of the Shergill family looking at themselves. So this is also another version of Enclosing the Gaze, that each one of the people are self-absorbed. From the right, you have Amrita Shergill in her Hungarian dress, as well as wearing a sari. And you have the mother who loved Chinese and Japanese work, wearing this robe. And there's a painting by a Dutch painter who's looking at the mirror, wearing also what looks like a Chinese dress. And to the left is I'm seated there on my grandfather's lap, and this camera, which as if I'm clicking this picture and I'm reflected in it, with my mother looking out towards the viewer. So this composite view allowed me to manipulate the family photograph to create narratives, and I was part of a school of narrative painting. I forgot to mention the painting Bhupen Khakkar and Guddo were really, I was one of the 6 artists of Place for People that brought back Indian painting to a narrative painting in the early 80s. Next, please. Here again, this is originally a self-portrait of Umrao Singh as a kind of thinker, philosopher, with his typewriter and the drawer beautifully brought out. So when I started looking at these family pictures, I realized that he had a great sense of composition, of a position that was understanding photography very early on as a statement. But of course, they remain in the family album. And when I started making these photographs, then many people realized that, yes, he can be named as one of the pioneers of modern Indian photography, as opposed to Raja Deen Dayal, who continued the colonial project. And here, Amrita is wearing a sari, and she's looking from the flat in Paris, that now the time has come for me to go back to India. So there are stories within stories, which then you will gradually get. But as I said, this lecture is just showing the surface of all these things. I think I have to move faster if I have to get across and finish it in 1 hour. Next, please. This is called The Lovers, and the portrait behind is Boris Taslitsky, a painter, a colleague of Amrita's. They had a relationship. And here is Umrao Singh doing a yogic exercise brought into this room, as both of them have been. Next, please. Well, talking about lovers, this is a series I did in reference to Bhupen Khakkar. And as you could see, his love for color, which in that painting, people come and go, where he's sitting with Howard Hodgkin and the blue, that I literally evacuate his colors and I trace his figures, and I'm able to, what shall I say, play with them. And Bhupen had a great flexibility literally in his body as well. We lived together as friends, not as partners, and he could just, bend his leg and put it around his head with such a flexible, fluid aspect. And so I convert his painting into this playful two figures, and it's called Angels and Devils, because he had dreams that devils were after him. Next, please. This is a painting called Wedding Anniversary, and I cut them up and then used the stitching to join the points. So as if in a kind of horoscope aspect where you have geometric figuration on top of to tell what is the astrological part of it. This is just a playful connecting of different points with string and making a kind of abstract version from his painting. Next, please. Well, this is another wonderful jump cut, and this very fluid abstraction of a dress are cut from these paper cups. I was making a work where I didn't want what you're seeing on top to be part of it. So I got somebody to cut each cup and then have these circles, and then these circles then became a dress for this wonderful performance. And this performance is in the Ravindra Bhavan galleries, which you might know, and it's 100 feet long, and that's the length of a normal ramp show. And behind are different objects of mine from sculptures, and they are stood up, and the performers enter from one side, left side, go all the way around, and she's come round in front of it. And to the right is an audience of about, in each row had about 40 seats and 3 rows deep, and watch the performance. Next, please. And this is in the exhibition, and it's called the Red Diva. And these are all made of Chinese bras. And behind is a garment called Hair, which is all made of false hair. Next, please. Well, continuing that red and the play, the chair is inside a huge frame in the Victoria Memorial, which I was allowed to use, and on it is printed Queen Victoria, who is outside, and she is literally almost 20 feet in height, but of course the photograph just makes it about 8 feet. So you barely see her trace, and through her trace you see the plastic chair playfully there. And to the left are all texts about strikes, both with the peasantry and the working class, and their dates, which I had a historian to help me. So I'm juxtaposing, power and the struggle against power by the labor strikes to the left. Next, please. And this is the entrance view to the Victoria Memorial, to the Darbar Hall, which is about 80 feet high. And not in this photograph is a text on the dome of Rabindranath Tagore and Jivanandan Das. And here is a railway track, which then actually a trolley can move and go till the end. I have a video of it, and you can see that all of that. So different aspects of Bengal culture and industry, the tea industry, for example. And there's a big ominous black wagon, which you enter, and there's a sound work, a very melancholic, tragic work. And then you go out onto this platform, which I hoped I could get poets to read. And on the right are tables and chairs, which were meant for what famously the Bengalis call adda. But I wasn't allowed to do that. And at the back are 500 file boxes with names, and many of them have photographs of people who were in the freedom struggle, but not all officially recognized. And above are 3 paintings by Rabindranath Tagore, Vinod Bihari Mukherjee, and Ramkinkar Baij. Next, please. These are potsherds from the Muziris excavation, which is about 50 miles out of Kochi, and the persons, Riaz Komu mainly, called it the Kochi Muziris Biennale because Muziris was an extraordinary town which had a big trading center and then disappeared for hundreds of years until it was only found about 50, 60 years ago. And from the excavation, these are all the discarded potsherds which have no value, and I was allowed to use them to make this big installation. And next, please. And the next is a video of this, a 3-channel video that shows the submerging of this installation, which you see with this. Next, please, which you see here. So here it gets flooded, and through them peppercorn is black peppercorn is put there, and it's the black pepper that the word black gold came, because pepper was an item for exchange, particularly with the Roman Empire. And so the area Kerala exported it. So this is something where sometimes all 3 screens are not there, and you can walk on it, and then the projection starts on you. So that idea of walking over the installation was something that I have tried in different ways. Next, please. And here again is a multitude, and again terracotta informs this work, and this work refers to Ramkinkar Baij, which I was very actively working with. He was again one of the Bengal moderns in Shantiniketan, and a very radical artist, if I can use that word, and powerful and energetic. And for him, energy was the most important thing in his work. And so you have 2 major works of his, which are life-size, 10 feet in height, but they both express 2 levels of energy. The earlier one is called Santhal Family, which has a more leisurely gait, and the other one is called Mill Call, and I've called it Mill Recall, which you'll see. So the tribals have entered the proletarian area where they are now going to the factories to work, and so they have to have a tremendous energy which Ramkinkar proposes that they have. Next, please. And so since speed and energy were what he wished to do, my version of it was that the motor car is what has speed and energy, which moves on the road. And so these are all motor car parts, and you can see that they resemble, if you know, mill call, that this one figure which turns backwards to look. The famous story when Nandalal Bose, Master Moshai, was watching Ramkinkar make his work, and the figures were both looking in front, and he said, but why? There's too mechanical. You must turn the head of one of them to look back or to see where the distance they've come. And he just broke the head, turned the head around. And so I have referred to that, and you can see the playful use of them. They have very big breasts, and I have also found nice objects to show that. But this is also an object which there was a performance which I did with Anuradha Kapoor and Shantanu Bose, 2 directors, 2 theatre directors from the National School of Drama. And there was a section that Anuradha did, which was in open air theatre, and this sculpture is wheeled through the stage, and then at the end comes out. And these have lights in them. the white light that you see. Next, please. Well, again, one extraordinary jump cut and a huge container that would, in some sense, hold this energy of the of the mill, the tribal mill worker, and be a working class event. But here, as the title is, Meanings of Failed Action, Insurrection. This was a very ambitious project that I did with Ashish Rajadaksh, and sorry, there's another name mentioned of David Chapman, the sound artist. And this was in reference to a naval mutiny, as they like to call it, but rather the British like to call it. But it was organized by the sailors, and they captured Bombay for many days. And in fact, there was incredible violence where thousands of when they went out into the streets, and the British army just shot them down. Very little of that killing. Jallianwala Bagh is very well known, but this event in Bombay, were important people who came, and they said we had no idea that this kind of violence took place in, I think it was in March 1946. But it was one of the aspects that signaled that now the empire has come to an end, and the British realized that this mutiny was a closing chapter for the colonial rule. So next, please. And this is the inside of the boat, which has a light work, and you can see people seated in the dark. They are about, on each side, about 15 people, so about 30 people can sit inside. And there's a sound and light work within it, dealing with different issues and texts that are spoken. A 40-minute sound and text work, which then that you can sit inside and experience. So in this darkness, I leave you, and thank you very much. I think I've done it in good time.
Hello. Wonderful, wonderful. Say something about your going from India to overseas to study from Baroda.
So, sorry. Jatin, I got a Commonwealth scholarship in 1966, and I went into the Slade School, which I briefly mentioned in my talk. And it was, of course, London, as they said, was the swinging city, swinging London, and it had acquired from its kind of old-fashioned colonial look with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and all the other great singers, a new culture of youth and dynamism. But there was also a lot of aspects of protest that were taking place. But the art school, the Slade School, up till then was one of the more conservative schools. But the director, although he was a Sir William Coldstream, a traditional painter, realized that he had to bring in new aspects to the school. And so he introduced a post-diploma course, which only I think the Royal College had. And so when I came there, in the painting department, one person made the largest piece of sculpture within the painting department. So it was very free, and as I said, very important for me was the department of history of cinema studies, and they got films from all over the world. So those years there completely transformed me, and you can see some examples of them in the paintings.
Yeah. You are one of the few artists in the country who's tried many things. In one hand, you had beautiful detail painting. On the other hand, installations using varieties of material and shocking, totally, the viewer gets completely flabbergasted by your presentation in certain things. And I've seen many of your exhibitions. But while talking about your Slade School, from Baroda, a lot of people went to the Royal Academy. Am I right? And many of them.
A few of them did, yeah.
Royal College of Art.
Royal College of Art, yeah.
Royal College of Art, sorry. So, but there is almost a connection. I remember Peter the Francier,
Yeah,
I knew him in the early 70s.
okay. Yeah. He was known to me, but he was very close to Geeta, who
Yes.
in his department of what was not cultural studies, but it was a form of cultural studies. So she was a big influence on Peter de Francia and of course other painters like B.V. Suresh and Rekha Rodriguez.
Many of them went there. But every time I see your exhibition, I find it's totally a new experience.
Thank you. It's very kind of you to say that.
And you have a studio in Ayanagar also.
Oh, you know that also.
Yeah.
Well, that big the boat was made there, and that lovely big studio allows that space to,
When you took the place in Ayanagar, right at the beginning, I had gone.
Yeah.
It's a long time ago. And so, and your innumerable works, also photography and collage and computer manipulation on your family photographs.
Yeah.
Family, Amrita Shergill.
Right.
And Yamasi. You have a lot of this, another side of you, which has deep involvement in your family.
That's right.
And Amrita Shergill.
Yeah.
Which is natural, but would you like to elaborate a little bit on that?
No, I think the other key figure to mention, which I did, is that it comes alive through photographs, as you know. Yes. And photographs in family albums could just be family album pictures which only the family sees. But I realized that Umrao Singh's photographs had something more to them. So I started showing them around to people and said, what do you think? And then first they said, family ka hai. Then they recognized that there's more to it, and people like Christopher Pinney and others have recognized and named him as one of the founders or pioneers of modern Indian photography, just as Amrita Shergill has named as one of the pioneers. So I think that the way they've come together and the way that photography, I did an earlier show called the Shergill Archive. I didn't show that version, but I just took photographs of Amrita Shergill till the age of 28 and Umrao Singh's photographs till he was about 80. And I did them as two strips, and you could see one above the other, that running horizontally, it covered a big span, and then vertically when they were all in, say, in Paris, and the same place was being photographed. So the two kind of, they're analog, they are not manipulated, but it was already suggesting a strip from a film. And then once the digital wand, as I call it, came into my hands, so I could play around with the family and imply all sorts of nice things about it.
Yeah. In one hand, your ancestral, your introspection and your journey with the family. And on the other hand, you have digested Chinese, Japanese, American war, the movement, Dostoevsky is. So you have crisscrossed innumerable things in your journey as an artist. And it takes a long time for anybody to comprehend or understand an artist's journey.
No, that's very generous of you, Jatin, and that, otherwise, people would say, oh, he's still experimenting. Ye karta ek din, dusre din, kuch aur karta hai. But finally, I think there are certain elements that start connecting, whether they are personal histories, whether they are the aspect of form that moves, a whole, like the Victoria Memorial work, or just with garbage. so that the chaos then gets a certain direction, a gestalt, and it moves. That's why, in a very playful way, some of these juxtapositions, like I didn't know after the red brass, what do I move to? So I said, I remember the red plastic chair for Queen Victoria's, where she would be seated. So these little in jokes are then making comments about power and authority. And so this particular, I've never done this, but I allowed myself to have very free interconnection with different kinds of work. And so then some parts that get forgotten then can be brought in. I mean, like the Orientalist, I never thought that after the Kuddo painting, which became, the painting gets a certain authority, and the fact that it was part of something called Place for People, to then bring in a huge number of pastels that I made using a reference to 19th and 20th century photography.
A lot of people sum up an artist and his work in few words and make comments. It's very sad. Even say you and I know each other for 60 years, and yet one has many surprises, which is very beautiful, One can't take each other for granted, but there is a base where you can connect.
Yeah.
And these days, a lot of people sum up and make comments. So when I see your journey, one from a very senior, your father was a senior bureaucrat, then come from Amrita Shergill family, your cross-breed. Then your sister was an activist. Then you study in Baroda. At a time, K.G. Subramaniam and all this, Jairam Patel, Jyoti Bhatt, then going to London. And then your own mindscape. And like even when you lived in the chawl at Worli,
Yeah.
and that was for mill owners, workers, when you stayed.
Yeah.
That decision, what I'm saying is, as a friend and as an artist,
Yeah.
I see where your journey started. You did not live in a posh place.
Yeah.
You had done up that, and I remember meeting you there many, many times.
Yeah.
And then you were friendly with a young lady who was a singer, who was mad, Yeah. So all these, then Geet Patel and others there, And we spent innumerable time. I remember an anecdote, and I will sum it up from this. In Nana Chowk or somewhere, there were some Gujarati poets, and I used to write poems. I have been writing, and a lot of people don't know that I write poems. Anyway, so Ghulam Ahmad Sheikh used to write, and I was attending a poetry reading there, private reading, not for public, no press.
Yeah.
Bhupen arrived, he was doing a course in chartered accountants.
Yeah.
So Bhupen said, Sheikh said, Bhupen bhai, thoda lita doro na, why don't you do some drawings? And then Bhupen said, I don't know how to draw. You remember? So,
right.
These kind of moments, and innumerable events.
No, you very vividly captured this this moment. And when you said Nana Chowk.
No, as I'm talking to you, they're coming back.
Yeah,
it's not in my stock.
Yeah.
But, I'm recollecting,
No,
a beautiful time that we all had spent.
We all do that. The Nana Chowk reference is to a very close friend of the group called Rasik Shah. Who
Of course.
I
knew him very well, very well.
Exactly.
Very well. Yeah, Rasik Shah.
Poets and writers and all, they used to be party poets.
Then Phullabhai Memorial Institute.
That's right, yeah.
Then Jahangir Art Gallery, Taj Art Gallery. And then, as we said, Peter de Francia in London. So you have crossed many roads, and you have taken the liberty in a gallery to bring junk and make a meaning out of it.
Yeah.
I remember.
There were complaints from the Lalit Kala administration.
Yes.
Smell that it was a tower of 14 feet, almost.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah. A lot of people used to say, I remember, overheard, it's only Vivan can do this nonsense. You know what I mean? You brought many junk and you made some meaning out of it, which is lovely. But At the same time, there is a line of innocence, which a lot of people, when they're judging, they don't look at the innocence of an artist who picks up elements spontaneously, in spite of all the intellectual input. Thank you very much, Vivan. I have to rush somewhere. Wonderful. God bless you. Give my love to Gita. Yeah.
You did a wonderful rounding up. And the word innocence, as I said, the May 68 movement was an anarchist movement. And there was an element of innocence that you could capture the world and transform it.
Yeah.
But
let's keep in touch. Little more often. Very little time is left, in life.
Okay.
So if we can, and reminisce and share and enjoy. Okay. Thank you very much. God bless. Take care.
I mean, we're not closing the session though. It's just because he is a guest of honor in a session, so he has to leave.
Okay. He was wonderful.
But with this, I'll open it up to questions and for everyone. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask away, and you could just unmute yourself, or we could unmute you. Just put on a video.
I would like to say something. I don't know whether I'm muted or not.
No, you're not.
I'm not muted. Okay, well, I can't see myself, but I'm sure Vivan can hear me.
Hello, Aftab. Lovely to hear you. Lovely to hear you.
Ola and I have been watching this with such fascination and nostalgia.
Yeah.
Because just as there I am in my
West.
in my regalia. No, I said, just as Jatin has known you for 60 years, I've known you for close to 70. But I've also been so much in the earlier days. I regret that your Ayanagar studio days, I am now out of it. But up to the point of your photography and the gallery that the young Daulat Singh girl did, with the Umrao Singh photography exhibition.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention to those people who are still in listening to this, that there was this wonderful film that Khopkar did, if you recall, of you, Bhupen, and Nalini Malani, the three of you, called Figure of Thought. Yes. I have it, and I have put it on a pen drive, and I would like to somehow send it. Do you have a copy of it?
I do have a copy, yeah.
Good, yes. Because I remember it won the President's Gold Medal for the best documentary of the year.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to remind the audience about that wonderful workshop that you did.
Yeah.
Across the world, of course, but in this little gallery called Bollhagen's Gallery in Worpswede outside Bremen.
Oh, you remember? Because you were posted in Hamburg.
That's right. And you came with this wonderful group. I think Jogen was there, and Sudhir Patwardhan and DLN Reddy.
Yeah, perfect.
Manu Parekh, I think, was with
Manu
you.
and Nalini.
Nalini, was it Nilima? Nilima Sheikh. Nilima came.
No, Nalini came.
Anyway, you all had that wonderful workshop with the German artists in Braunschweig. You remember that?
Yeah, of course.
Yes. So these are aspects of your work internationally. And I remember the wonderful show in the Roppongi Hills in 2008 in Tokyo, which I came to see. Someone, I forget now who organized that. It was a big show of Indian artists in this great gallery in Roppongi Hills in Tokyo, 2007-8. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was in this big tower where there was a
That's right.
famous fellow who owned it. It was a big shopping center.
It's called the Mori Gallery.
Mori Art Museum.
That's right.
The Mori Museum. That's right.
Yeah.
That's where was this wonderful show. I think Ghulam Sheikh's work was there, and yours, and I forget who else was there, but I remember seeing that. And then, of course, you came to Karachi, and you did this wonderful show at Raza's brother's place. Do you remember a man called Ali Imam who ran the Indus Gallery in Karachi?
Yeah.
He got together all the local Pakistani artists
Yeah.
And you and Geeta came and showed your work to these people. And it was a great show because of Amrita's Mayo links. I think, wasn't she connected with the Mayo
No.
College?
No,
No,
not at all. But she was born, as her father said, in Lahore. And
In
she
Lahore.
died in Lahore.
And she died in Lahore. There was this Lahore connection, I recall.
Yeah.
So many of these artists in Pakistan had this, geographical link with Lahore, and they all gathered there, and it was such a animated, wonderful show, which I remember so well.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to add how wonderful it has been listening to you and remembering our very interesting and affectionate past. And I might tell you that in my autobiography, which will soon, I hope, be published, some of the events that I have been speaking to you about figure.
Okay, thank you.
So good luck. And
Thank you.
I hope we shall see you, and good health. And I look forward to seeing you both very soon.
Yeah. Hi, Pola, and hope to see you soon.
You've got everyone reminiscing.
Yeah.
There's Pratul Dash who's got a question.
Yeah.
Hi. Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, Pratul. Nice to see you.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Hope
very well.
all. I mean, nice to see you after a long time. And see, I don't have any question. Basically, when you and Jatin both were talking, so it was fantastic to listen. Like the whole memories and the respect for each other works, and that's fantastic. That's phenomenal. And yeah, that is what for the long time I've not seen you, so thought this is a platform where I can say hello to you, and yeah, wishing for a good health. As you know that I'm a big fan of your works. I don't have to say that again and again, but yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you so much, Pratul. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there are two. There's a question that I'm reading out that was a message to me. This is from an old childhood friend of yours. I hear that at school you were thought of as an athlete and a runner rather than a painter. When did you yourself know that you wanted to be an artist? Laila Tayyabji.
Oh, yes. Dear Laila, yeah. Well, I was that. In fact, surprisingly, even for me to say it, that when you go to the school, you'll find my name as the captain of the athletics team. How that name came for me, I don't know, but it's there. But yeah, in my last year, they said I took the wrong subjects, higher maths and all that. I shouldn't say it, but at the last moment before the school, I went into the art school and started painting, and painted a huge amount of, post-impressionist paintings. And so that kind of marked me that I'm going to join an art school, and I went to Baroda.
Lovely. Any other question that anyone has, please ask away. Till someone does. What is it that you are working on now?
I've been invited by the Sharjah Biennale for something that Okwi and Wieser, the late director of the Haus der Kunst, had given me, not a retrospective, but a large body of my work covering right from the London paintings. And he had proposed to Princess Hoor that please name this Biennale Thinking Historically in the Present. So first group of 30 artists, was selected, and our works have been commissioned by them. And then Princess Hoor has then included many others. So I'm working on that, and it's an ambitious over a period of time, and that period of time has actually produced, which I normally don't do. The works are in, shall I say, sections or chapters, and they're all photography based, and I've done them also through digital manipulation to even performance, with a photography couple living elsewhere with their two daughters. So finally, I said I must get back to one base camp of mine, and that's materiality, which you saw very much in the memorial work. So I'm creating some steel structures, which then I will have an actor to position himself in that space.
Oh, sounds very exciting. When is it happening? When it will happen?
The show opens in February 23.
There's someone called Govind Vishwas who has comment. बड़ौदा में विवान सर ने एक इंटरनेशनल इंस्टॉलेशन किया था. पूरे डिपार्टमेंट में सफेद पेपर लगाकर सभी स्टूडेंट से उसमें रेखांकन करवाया था. बाद में उसे जला दिया गया था. क्यों? मैं उस समय वहां पढ़ रहा था, इसलिए मुझे जानने की उत्सुकता है.
बहुत शुक्रिया आपका सवाल. और जब भी कोई इसके बारे में कहता है, आई एम वेरी हैप्पी. सॉरी, मैं पूरी हिंदी में तो नहीं बोल सकता हूँ, बट इट वाज आई थिंक द 50th एनिवर्सरी of Indian independence, and I went to the school, and there were many of my friends who are still there in the painting department, and I proposed to them that let me do a continuous 40-hour day and night workshop from what would be 13th of August right through 14th midnight, where they would then destroy the work, and they were shocked to begin with. How can we? And I said each one works, and then slowly they went into each other's space. So Subramaniam had done some drawing, B.V. Suresh, and then bit by bit they started doing drawing over it. And then I said, now tear it down bit by bit, and then some tried to tear it, Subramaniam piece, and keep it for some further use. But I said, nahi, bahar, there will be two forms of burial, and one will be the funeral pyre, and the other will be the grave. Of course, 80% or 90% did put the drawings in the fire, and the smaller percentage buried them. And there was the Nehru speech was spoken there. So it was, what shall I say, a very special moment, because there were a lot of problems, as you know, I won't go into them, in the school, and you know, the students had been, you know, resuscitated or even, you know, arrested. It's happening today even. So it was a moment to come together and say that with art we can, and such joy from different departments and ex-students, many of them live in Baroda. They came, and I don't know, 30, 40, 50 artists, and each started working, and slowly, and I had the big Fabriano paper, the school was able to get it. And so we covered the wall, not the walls, but the paper. And the idea was that then it will be removed. Thank you for the question.
Are there anyone else? I can see Balan Nambiar is there, Poogie Menon is there.
Oh,
Anyone
wow.
else? And if you would like to ask questions, Katie, you are there. Any of you, please feel free to ask. And there are many others. Nandita. So you have Vivan for the next 8 minutes. Make the most of it. And you also talked about your Kasoli. I don't know if you're allowed, if I'm making a faux pas by talking about it, or can one speak about it?
Yeah, sure, please.
Okay. So also you're reviving, you said about your home in Kasoli, but also this place that you started for the art residencies.
Yeah.
You had sessions and you're resurrecting it.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, briefly in a few minutes. Well, Kasoli started in 1976, and there was a Kashmir camp started by Santosh, but that was LKA, and here it was in a home, and I invited my friends and other people. So it has grown, and in fact, from the art camp, it grew into other disciplines, and the stage was built. And I'm happy to announce, if the publisher allows me, that a beautiful book written and edited and interviewed by Belinda Danoya from Baroda And then because of other professionals that were there, from theater to women to other people, that this book should have been out a year ago, but now it's going to come out, almost 400-page book, which we are hoping to release in the Punjab University Museum, because Dr. B.N. Goswami, the great man, is still alive, and I hope he's there for the opening. That there was a small exchange of money. If I tell you the amount, you might laugh, but anyway, that it set the ball rolling. And so something like 80 paintings are there in the Punjab University Museum. And our organization has grown, and we've got our director, Latika Gupta, who will be curating the show. And we just got the permission from the University Museum for her to put up this show. So it will open in the first week of October. And we're also planning a seminar. So please keep in touch, because it will be very good to have a recap of not just the artists, but the theater people, the film people, and the women who were asking important questions. There's a film that my late sister Navina Sundaram made of the journey, which was talked about by Aftab, a German and Indian artists, and also on women artists that she shot. So we hope to get many of these films shown there as well.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to ask anything?
Siddharth, this is Katie.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi,
Yes,
Katie. Hello, Katie.
Hi. How are you? Nice listening to you after a long time. Well, I just wanted to ask you about one thing. The first time that I encountered your work was in the Place for People exhibition. I think it was in 1980 or 81.
Yeah.
And to me, it is still one of the biggest milestone exhibitions I've seen.
Yeah.
I think there were 5 of you who exhibited together, and it was really mind-blowing for me. It still remains one of the best things that I've seen. Now, having said that, I've also tried to see almost every exhibition that you've had. If I was in town, I always made sure that I saw it and also interacted with you on some occasions. But what I want to ask you as a question is that I'm baffled by the absence of any mention of politics in your whole discourse about your art. Whereas, if you ask me, I think you are the most politically aware artist, the most responsive to immediate events. Every riot evoked an exhibition from you, and very powerful artistic, kind of response to the event. And that, I think, is even what appears to be, kind of just dramatic display and so on, are actually very profound commentaries on environment, on the current capitalist culture, on consumption, etc., etc. And I think that's an important aspect of your work, which you did not mention at all. So I'm just wondering whether you would like to say something about that.
Yeah, that's a very pertinent question. And if I can say, my dear departed late Tushar Jog, who was an activist, he came to my show and he said, "Vivan, so much of your work is missing." I said, "What did you?" He said, "All your activist work, what you did, Sehmat, what other organizations that you did, uska koi naam nishan nahi hai." So literally, when there was a sort of re-showing of them, because some of the work had gone to Germany, I took up his point. And you're right that to bring up the theme of politics, much of it is embedded, as you can see, but to state it forthrightly is not that easy. There's one thing which I want to say, which connects to you directly, and it's one work called New Delhi, Room with Bed. This exhibition, which was in the Shidrani Gallery, and you being an architect, you were the one of the few people who thought that this work, had something to it in the way that the different elements, followed one after the other. But somehow that work has just been sort of erased because most people didn't seem to respond to it.
Vivan, I wrote a review on it.
I know you wrote, that's what I'm bringing it up. And you were, as an architect, you understood the meaning of from one element to the other, what they were. So that I just bring that up. But again, the word politics has appeared, but has come very directly in some way with my curating things for Sahmat and mentioning that. But it's not easy in our times to bring those. And so I thought that in the short time I have, I will playfully move across different aspects of my work.
Thank you. Actually, we are hoping that the next speaker would be Amba Sanyal. And we hope, fingers crossed. I'm glad Katie came in, so that was a reminder for that too. And I also wanted to share, there was this thing which you might remember. I'm just going to share our screen again. I don't know if you remember this. Oops, everything's up.
Yeah, lovely, thank you.
Yeah, this was way back in the 60s. The portrait, I think, done of yours. Yeah, I think it was the 60s or 70s. I can't remember. No, it says 84. Sorry.
84, okay, yeah.
Yeah. And with that, I'd like to say, if you would like to say something to close it, Vivan, and after that, I'll just close it. Any closing words from you?
Well, as I said, it was not easy to put so many things together, and how do you stop, going on rambling about your work. Fortunately, I kept very much within the time, and but I did appreciate how Jatin remembered things so vividly, and that this personal aspect of him connecting, I'm sure, to many different artists. Of course, there are not many that were in Bombay and that he could come to the chawl and speak about that. But that was a very important aspect of my, what shall I say, from Baroda. I did not want to come back to Delhi and to the elite house that I came from. And then subsequently, I got the scholarship and went. So this period in Bombay, really, I mean, it's a city which is well known, that is so cosmopolitan and dynamic, and there was so much happening in not that it doesn't happen now, but for every youth person, their period of the 60s, or not Christian Khanna, but he wasn't there. But the progressive group would say that the 50s and 60s was their moment. So I did come into the 60s, and the fact that it was Bombay and your father was there, that dynamic relationship has continued, and he's also into institution making, whereas I am also, as I moved from the Kasoli Art Center to set up the Vivan Sundaram Arts Foundation. So that is something that we hope will continue to bring like-minded people, as this world for such like-minded people, one can now, or should say openly, that is shrinking, and we have to protect ourselves and be careful. And therefore the word politics, to mention it, should not be, what shall I say, one should not be afraid, but one shouldn't also be reckless. And I do speak, and you don't know how much gets picked up, on people who are doing surveillance. But anyway, one has to keep speaking in the tongue that one has.
Thank you very much. And I hope that the more centers like ours and yours across the country, and there could be such a lovely network and constellation of these like-minded centers which have different approaches, and there's so many opportunities for collaborations and things. And I think it'll be so exciting for a lot of people who love art and who are practitioners and in allied fields too. And thank you very much for this lovely talk. And I remember when you were saying that 1 hour felt like it was too long a time. And I'm glad you felt like that it was too short a time to tell the whole story of your journey. So I'm glad that has happened. And thank you very much for doing this. And thank you everyone for attending. We do this series on every second Saturday of the month. And it used to be at 6, and we are doing it at 5 p.m. from now. You are the first one, Vivan, who's done it at 5 p.m. Thank you very much. And thank you all. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, Siddharth.
Thank you.
All the people who came to listen to me. Good names. Okay.
Thank you.